Adam Penna. I'm here today to continue the conversation in 3D printing and additive manufacturing. I'm very excited today. I have Sherry Handel, who's from the Additive Manufacturers Green Trade Association, the AMGTA. I love the GTA in any kind of a combination there, so that's pretty cool to have. But the Additive Manufacturers Green Trade Association is a large part of what's been happening to bring the focus on sustainability in our industry. So I'm happy to have today Sherry Handel. Sherry, welcome.
Thank you, Adam. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Great to have you here. I have to say, to start off, I know we talked a few months ago, I think it was in June, when this kind of pandemic was kind of kicking into overdrive at that time. And I know you had just pretty much started up over there in February. So between February and June, and then me reaching out to you during the pandemic, and then now actually having the time to schedule this together, I really appreciate you doing this. And obviously it's been a wild ride. So thanks for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Yeah, like I said, and a lot has happened, certainly, and coming on board to a new role with a new organization. And then shortly thereafter, you know, the pandemic sweeps across, it certainly was around the world in different places when I came on board, and then it came to America in a big way and then kept spreading. And of course, that can impact all kinds of businesses, and it's certainly had an impact in the AM industry, as you know.
Yeah, and now you're of course down there in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I'm in Austin, Texas, and there's some different things that have been happening in both of our states, and it has been an interesting time for all. But obviously, with the Green Trade Association kicking off, and you taking over there as you're the executive director over there at the AMGTA, so I know you've been involved in a lot of things, but this probably wasn't your plan to go at things this way, obviously, and having all the virtual meetings when all the trade shows have gone away from being in person this year. So there's been a lot of course, changing and switching around that everyone has to do. How has that been for you starting off? You know, it has to be a lot of new ways of doing things, but you're doing well. So
Yeah. It's the idea was that I would have the debut appearance at Rapid TCT show.
Rapid TCT, yes,
yeah.
Of course.
So Rapid TCT was when I was going to be moderating the first ever sustainability and AM thought leadership panel there. And that, of course, got canceled. And then after having been slated for that role, I was also asked to moderate for the IMTS show, which is the International Manufacturing Trade Show.
The big one, yeah. In Chicago. And that was to be held in September of this year, and that got canceled. So I was going to, you know, of course, have some great exposure there for the organization. And then Formnext in November just got canceled, and my panel has moved to a live panel for 2021. They did not want to have this particular panel be a virtual panel. But the exciting news is I was just asked this week to moderate a user panel on sustainability and AM design and environmental products for Formnext Connect, which is the name they're using for their virtual platform for this year. For November 21st is when that panel will be held. Great. Yeah, I know I can put a link to that in this particular conversation. So yeah, that's a really good point. I guess as far as sustainability ties into all of additive manufacturing, there's so much going on. So the actual association and what they get into now, explain a little bit of that. Like, what are some of the programs that you've been able to start to bolster and pick up during your time there?
Right. So this organization was, you probably know, was first announced at Formnext in 2019 as a new trade group, international, nonpartisan, independent organization, structured as a nonprofit 501c6 to promote the environmental benefits of additive manufacturing over traditional manufacturing. We support our members by providing opportunities for them to showcase what they're doing to the industry. So whether it's speaking on a panel or introductions to someone in the trade press that's doing a story on sustainability, there's been a lot of interest in that. Lately, a huge actual uptick. And I've made several referrals, and another one today for a trade article. So it's nice because I know who our members are, and I know what they're doing in terms of sustainability in improving their internal operations, their supply chain transparency, and other areas of sustainability. So I can, with confidence, refer them and know that they really are doing great work, and they'll be well represented
for the industry on these different panels or in a trade article. Yeah.
That makes great sense. I mean, sustainability is often over talked, you know, as far as a buzzword goes, but to see it in action and actually policies that put in place. I know I heard you talk a lot before. Obviously, you deal with metal additive manufacturing the most, and having what's going on with what's coming out of the machine, what happens to the powders, and that's the condensate it's called, that's left over from what's happening when we're melting layer by layer with a powder. And then there's, you know, different municipalities, different locations that deal with the disposal of that in different ways. But I heard you were looking into a little more about what can happen with condensate, and kind of getting into working with some of the standards that are in place. So can you talk a little bit about that and how that's been going?
Well, there is no standard for handling safe handling and disposal of condensate. So just to back up a little bit, just for those that are outside of the AM metal industry,
sure,
to understand, well, what is condensate? So when AM metal powder bed fusion, for example, machines produce a part, there's the powder that's left over that can be reused several times. But then there's this condensate, which gets sucked out of the machines, that's been impacted by the laser process, and the morphology is destroyed, so it cannot be reused as a powder waste, you know, where again, the powder can be reused if it's removed from the machine, but this condensate cannot be. It is considered here in the United States hazardous waste because of chromium content, especially if that AM metal powder was titanium or perhaps nickel. It can result in this chromium content that is considered, again, hazardous. So it is costly to dispose of. It requires special handling because it is combustible, and it ends up getting treated before it gets landfilled. And there has to be a better way. And so we are working with several of our member companies to find better ways to deal with this. And we plan to actually publish industry standards in early 2021 to share with the industry and our member companies.
Yeah, that's huge. I know that's been a big issue going along and talking to you know, customers and people who have installations throughout the country, different ways of doing that, and always asking what the best ways are. And there, like you said, there hasn't been any true standards wrapped around it. So looking into how that can be done and helping with that is huge. It's a big concern for people, and obviously having that assistance with a group like yourself, it's wonderful. So I'm glad to see that progressing along. You know, there's a lot more to be done. So that's a great early thing to be looking at. But you talked a little bit about the digital thread and how, like, you know, when we're looking at things additive opposed to traditional manufacturing, it's a bit different. And the obvious things are there because, you know, when you're dealing with traditional manufacturing, you're actually maybe dealing with a full piece of metal, you know, that you're actually cutting away parts. And so you have a lot of scrap that way. And with powder bed, like laser powder bed fusion, you build layer by layer with a powder. And so like we were saying, it's the powder that's used that actually turns into the part. Some of it turns into condensate, but then there's a lot of it that's reused powder. So that's really cool. And that's really where people started to look at sustainability and additive, because you have not so much, you know, waste of the material. So that's really neat. You know, but so what are some of the other things you see as, you know, when we're addressing sustainability and additive, there's some of the big key factors?
There's been some research in sustainability in AM, but it's limited and it tends to be in silos. So the focus has tended to be on the energy usage of machines, or just focusing in on waste. But what we want to be able to do, and what we have started to do actually, is to focus on life cycle assessment, which is looking at a part that's produced from the cradle, from its birth, from the ore that comes out of the ground and is refined into a powder to be used in AM metal manufacturing, for instance, all the way to the end of life of that part, at the point it gets landfilled, or maybe it gets recycled or upcycled in some way. So that full LCA comparison of AM, whether it's polymer or metal, compared to traditional injection molding, or, you know, machining, or perhaps casting or forging, whatever it is, so that we can really truly show an apples to apples comparison of the same exact part being produced in different ways,
and then you can actually see what the environmental impact of those methods are.
Yeah, and compare it to a traditional way versus the additive way, and see where those kind of comparisons fall, and be able to make a judgment based on real data. That's important, right?
Yeah. So just wanted to start with those remarks, but then also to say, there's certainly some really clear benefits. The whole idea of being able to design for additive manufacturing results in lightweighting of parts because you're using less to produce that same metal part, for instance, that was conventionally manufactured. You don't need as much product, if you will, metal, to produce the lightweighted part. And as a result, in aerospace, you can see some significant weight savings that really multiply into fuel reduction and CO2 emissions reduction. The best lightweighting can result in some significant savings, but it's also applicable to other industries. But there isn't a lot of research. What's happening in automotive, for instance, and other forms of transportation, with the idea of optimizing design for these different industries, which reduces the weights and then ends up being a really great end result. But that's speculative because we don't have the research. It seems as though that would be the case. In aerospace, I think that there's been some initial studies that are really great, but we'd like to see more. So our organization is really set up to take feedback from our members to decide what future research we are doing. Like you had mentioned, our AM metal focus. Our metal focus has been initially because we need to start somewhere, and our board of directors is comprised of several member companies that have an interest in AM metal. But as we expand our board with more sustaining members, and we'll be making that announcement in mid-October of this year.
Awesome.
We will expect that we'll have more diverse representation from our industry. And as a result, over time, you'll see more expansive studies focusing on polymers, and we hope to do that in the future.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, obviously tying in what's happening on both metal and polymer, because they both have their sides of sustainability and what's happening out there in the workforce. And a lot of those standards, like you're saying, are yet to be set. So it seems like there has been a shift in that, obviously, over the last few years, and really paying attention to what can be done together in groups and making standards and making things more, because that's what it is. Like you're saying, in a life cycle, when you're looking at a life cycle of a part or anything that actually exists, when you're going through that, you're obviously going to have certain, benchmarks of what can improve. This didn't work the first time we went through looking at how we could do this, but hey, we've learned from past experience that we can improve doing it, and how then sharing that with everyone, because maybe some company, like you're saying, learns it inside their own silo of how to do that, but they save it for their own intellectual property, and it doesn't help the whole, the whole industry grow. So that's what I see is that the AMGTA is really coming in and helping the industry grow in those particular, sustainable actions. It's really important. So looking forward to seeing more of that coming out. And like you said, it sounds like you have a lot of that you're working on that's about to be rolled out in this early time. It's your first year. I know you've been doing things since February, and what a year to do it in 2020. It hasn't been typical for anybody. So, I guess that asked that builds a little part of a second part to that question is, being now that we're in this pandemic and things have been happening, how have those collaborations been? Have you been able to really get people to work on these things?
Oh, well, we have 3 projects. I mentioned the condensate standards project is one of 3. The other 2 projects are research projects. So the first research project that we commissioned is through Technical University of Delft in the Netherlands. It's a literature review, LCA, life cycle assessment of AM metal. So what we will be doing is very soon, we will be publishing that study as a white paper that we will share with our course members and then with industry. So we were originally planning to announce it at Formnext, but being it's a virtual event, we're announcing it virtually. So we'll have a press release, and then we'll of course have the white paper on our website for people to download. And I'll be sharing it, via email and noting it in social media posts, so people will of course learn that it's here for them and they can access it and read it and hopefully take away some key findings. And what this research will also do is it's going to share recommendations as to what additional research is needed, because what we're finding is there's not a lot out there.
Yep.
On LCA, which is kind of what I had seen from my preliminary research as a layperson going into free databases. And I didn't have access to paid databases, but I was not seeing a whole lot on LCA when I was doing my research.
Yeah, that's huge. So it's good to see more of that come about. And I know you mentioned that information would be available on the website. Is it AMGTA.org? Is that correct?
Correct. That's
okay.
Right.
Yeah, I'll have a link to that also in this this conversation, so people could check that out more. With all of those different things going on, I guess we talked about what's happening now. What are some of the goals for the future with AMGTA?
Well, we, of course, want to expand our membership, and that's where I spend a lot of my time, is getting our founding member team secured. We only have 7 seats on our board of directors, and each founding member company has 1 representative on our board of directors. So that's been a big focus. And of course, expanding our membership at large with other member companies at the participating membership level. So we're excited. We're going to be sending out a news release on that as well. In the week of October 19th, we'll be rolling out the member companies that have come on board at this point. And, that's really exciting. So that's been, despite the pandemic, there's been a tremendous amount of interest in what we're doing and in being part of it. And many companies have been struggling, as you know, with cash flow challenges, restricted cash, preserving of cash, and then also down cycles with their sales. So we expect 2021 will, of course, have more members come on board once the uncertainty with this pandemic goes away, if that's possible.
A little less uncertainty, hopefully.
Less uncertainty, hopefully, and I remain optimistic, but we'll see what happens in terms of the pandemic. But it really has impacted companies in a big way.
Yeah. So backing up on that, I know this pandemic has been different for all of us, but I mean, you coming to the company now and actually going through this and making these things happen over the last year. Prior to that, I guess, what brought you to the AMGTA? What was the background, the passion that made you so involved in sustainability and really looking at what can be done, especially on the 3D printing side?
Yeah, I had when I saw the job posting come up, I was interested in the position for several reasons. The sustainability focus, the fact that it was a startup was very appealing because I have a startup background. I've built and founded and launched several companies, and I love creating things from nothing. I find it really exciting. So that was like a really great combination for me, for my talents and interests. And then the other piece about it was, the growth of the AM industry. And I had certainly understood very well how 3D printing was used in prototyping in the startup sector in particular. And I had, of course, some background with manufacturing in my different roles in the startup world, as well as in a prior role in economic development and planning, having visited advanced manufacturing facilities and optics and other industries, and also seeing the advanced manufacturing, their additive manufacturing machines in those companies and what they were able to do. So I had a general understanding about the industry, but I didn't know as much as I do know now. I've learned a lot coming on board and kind of delving right in, which is something that I really enjoy doing, is trying to figure things out on the fly. So uncertainty is something, when you've been part of startups, it comes with the territory. You just have to kind of be creative, innovative, resourceful, just how to get from A to B, just figure it out. So I just went back to my sales skills and business development skills of reaching out to people on LinkedIn and through referrals and asking for introductions and being part of virtual events and virtual networking, to make those connections, to get those calls and to tell people about what we're doing via one-on-one calls versus at events like the trade shows that we were really planning on.
We're all missing those.
Big conduit for us,
Yeah. No, I mean, it is big, and that's a huge part of everybody's, driving passion to do something inside of their actually work roles. I think we're very lucky inside of 3D printing and additive. There's so many things that have been highlighted, even over the pandemic, fulfilling a lot of the personal protection equipment needs and some of the supply chain issues that were happening out there. And now there's a good focus on it again to saying, how can we get more involved in the whole manufacturing process as we look at 3D printing? because it's a large part of actually what can happen to mitigate some of those risks out there, but also, like you were talking about, getting into customization and being able to do things that you couldn't do in other traditional manufacturing methods. It's a different tool in the toolbox. It's not going to replace a lot of those methods, but it's another option that works well in industries like aerospace and medical and now urban mobility, where people have, you know, gone beyond automotive and just look at how they can get around. Even during this pandemic, it's people want to be more healthy, right? And they want to look at how they could ride bikes or get around town a little bit easier than, you know, just getting a car and motoring around. So there's all this shift and this change of our lifestyles. And I think obviously 3D printing has been a shining point of that. I feel very lucky to be involved in an industry that has a lot of hope inside of it. And obviously the AMGTA brings a large part of that, because it's highlighting what we can do to really sustain the industry, and to also sustain our lives and not be overwhelmed by what's going on with things like, you know, we're talking about condensate or a life cycle of a part. How does it relate to the traditional side? All of those things are very important. So the work you're doing is very important. And I want to say thank you. I appreciate you doing all the hard work and look forward to so much more from AMGTA. So again, we talked a little bit about what's happening upcoming. Do you have a lot of, is there upcoming resources? You said amgta.org. People could check out everything that's going on there. You said you have an upcoming piano, some of those things. What's going on? Yeah,
on our website, there's a resources section where you can take a look at some of the, of course, press releases we've issued and we'll soon be issuing. You'll see more in October and November, press releases. And then the articles through the trade press are there. As soon as they're published, we post them there. And of course, some of the talks that I've done virtually are featured on the media section.
Perfect.
And there's a great TEDx talk, I should say, from Brian F., the CEO of Syntavia.
Brian, yes, that's a good one. Yeah.
Who is the brainchild behind the AMGTA. So it was his idea, and he has come on board his company as a founding member company of the AMGTA and provided a lot of additional resources for us to get off the ground, which has been phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So that website will become really, our goal is to have a lot of great resources on there, and we're just building those as we go. But more will come as we grow as an organization, and we're excited about that. So we do have a second research project also that I wanted to talk to you about.
Awesome.
That is, we are commissioning a major U.S. university to do a life cycle assessment of a cast component in aerospace compared to an AM produced part, so that we can really see a true, again, apples to apples comparison of this full LCA. And that research article, white paper, will be published in time for Formnext 2021, which will be a live event, hopefully.
Yes,
you know, that's what we're planning on. And I just received word today. I just heard that Formnext is having an additional sustainability panel at the virtual Connect, Formnext Connect, this November. So you can expect to see 2 panels focused on sustainability in AM.
Great. Those are 2 good ones. Well, like you said, thank you for being here, Sherry. Is there anything else that you wanted to add while we have you here?
Let's see. Well, I'm really looking forward to meeting more people in the industry. If anybody's interested in setting up a call or having a conversation on the phone, I welcome that. Please feel free to reach out. On our website, there's a real easy way to do that. You just click on the Contact Us, and then it just generates an email and it comes to me, and I will personally answer your email, and look forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, definitely. I'll go ahead and put all those links to the description of this particular conversation. Again, thank you, Sherry, for being here. I look forward to seeing what happens with the AMGTA, and we'll definitely check in as things go along. Again, you have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Adam. I appreciate your time.